So what I'm covering today, I will be using Docker to install an instance of Postgres. Uh, I use this mainly a lot of QA environments or testing or anything we want to do like that. If you don't want to install the whole product, there's a quick way to use Docker to install multiple instances. You can run on different ports, a lot of things like that. So we'll just run through, starting from the beginning. So first thing we'll do is use yum. So I'm running CentOS. We'll do yum install the yum utils. It's going to give us a number of options we need. Also need to install some of the prerequisites for Docker. So in this case, the device mapper, which will allow us to use Thinpool. Now, Thinpool is another file system. In my example, we won't be using it, but in some cases you might want to. Thinpool is a more efficient storage mechanism and all that kind of thing, but for most cases you don't need it. LVM, another related to Thinpools. We'll have that there if we need it, but again, in this example we won't use it, but good practice to always have it. So the next thing we need to add is the actual location of where we're going to fetch Docker from. So we can do yum config manager. We'll add the repo for Docker. So again, this would be depending on which version. As they change, you might need a different URL, but it's all available on the Docker site. And it's specific to the OS you're running. So in my case, CentOS. So here's our repo. It adds it in. And then, of course, we'll clear the screen. We can now install Docker CE. Now the Docker site, it's interesting to have a look around to see all the different things that are available. In our case, so Postgres, I'll have other videos on a lot of the other things that I've had to do, but Docker is a common one in situations where you need to create a database quickly. It doesn't need to support large numbers, concurrent connections, or whatever it is, but if you want to have a quick method of doing this is what I'm showing. So anyway, so we'll use systemctl to start Docker. And then, of course, the last step to the installation process of Docker, we'll do a pull. So we're going to do Docker pull hello world. It's going to download, it's just a small image from the Docker repository. And it basically confirms that everything is running and you have access to the Docker repository. So now is the portion where we will actually begin our installing of Postgres. So first thing we'll do, when you create any image, we'll use Docker run. It's going to download and start it. The dash name, so that's a sort of just a label you're applying to the instance you're running. -d, detach sort of from the console you're in, so it'll run independently. P, you can map different ports. So in some cases, we won't want Docker to run on 5432, which is a default. My example, we're going to keep all defaults. So it's 5432. The -e parameter is attributes you're going to apply to the Docker image. So I'm going to set the admin name and password here. So that's what these -es are. And then lastly is where and what version of Postgres you want. So I'm using Postgres version 9.5. There are obviously other ones, 9.6, even up to 10. It depends, of course, what application you're using and what it's going to require. So what I've been using lately has been requiring 9.5.x and up. So that's why I'm using 9.5 in our example. So it's pulling all the various images associated with the Docker image. It's not very big. And then we're complete. So because we've specified the run parameter, we can then do a Docker PS, which is going to show all the various images you have running. So we can see here, Postgres, my tag is 9.5. And then, of course, on the right-hand side, way over, we can see the names of Postgres database. Now, if you want to actually see it running, so pgadmin is the sort of the standard tool everybody uses. It's going to allow us to connect directly to the database and see how it's configured. So just put in our information. Notice port 5432. The default database is Postgres, and I specified, of course, admin and Postgres as my password. So we can look in here. We'll be able to create a new database. Let's call it test 1, 2, 3, 4. and then the user that's going to be the owner of it. I only have the one user specified now anyways, but there it is. We can see logins. We can create a new login if we want. So we'll create my favorite one, Eugene, of course. Eugene. Can add comments, other things. I'm not going to put anything that isn't mandatory, so just add that for now. But point being, you can find a lot of different attributes to it. Of course, passwords. You can make them a super user, whatever we want to do. So there it is. Now, one of the really convenient things about Docker is, you consider this is an image, right? So it can do a lot of different things. I think what we'll do is we'll stop this image. So we can just do our Docker stop. There's a number of commands. We use our name that we applied to it, so Postgres database, so we'll stop it. Now, if we were to do a Docker PS, or we can connect, this instance is now down, so it's shut off. Now, the valuable thing that I find with Docker, we can now do anything we want with the image. We can start it again. So we'll use our name that we applied, so Postgres database. So we'll do Docker start. Now, if we refresh or connect, there it is running again. So everything we have is exactly like we left it. We can resume. So you could have multiple instances of this running at different states. If you were testing installation of an application, if you were testing database population, anything like that, you can start off at whatever state you've left it. So what we'll stop it again. So Docker stop, our name we have, Postgres database, and then we're shut up. Now, one thing to note, everything is self-contained in that Docker image. There might be some cases where you want the data to actually exist outside of the container itself. So this is where the device mapper option we added back when we did our yum install. So what we'll do, we'll create a directory in the root, and then this time we'll add a couple extra parameters. So we'll do Docker run. This time we'll apply a different name. So we'll use, what do we use? We can use Postgres database folder, whatever we want. Some of the other same parameters. So we're going to detach. We'll listen on the default 5432. V, so this is the volume we're going to use. So we're going to use our Postgres database directory we created in the root, and we'll map that to the default data directory that Postgres uses, varlib Postgres SQL, sorry, data. Then we'll add our same login and password. So we'll use for our password, my favorite, admin. And of course, need the user, the famous Postgres. And then of course, got to say where to get it from. So in this case, I think we'll use 9.5 again. Okay, now notice it didn't take nearly as long because the actual, the images are already downloaded to this machine. So now we'll run it and we'll see, of course, Postgres database folder. So we can refresh. Oops, hang on. In this case, so it's running with the same IP and port, which is why we didn't have to reapply here. But notice there's no database test that we'd created in our last instance. So the pgadmin tool, it's going to see the same thing. However, now the key thing is that if we look in our Postgres database folder, we get all of our configuration data for Postgres. So now if we wanted to apply different configuration changes and not use sort of the command line, we have access to the config files. So the standard ones that you most likely will want to change, you could want to change the port. So we can move here, we'll uncomment the hash sign so we can get access to the actual port number. I won't change it in this case, but that's where you would change it. Max connections, it defaults to 100 for some strange reason. I always put 1,000. You can never go wrong. Depends on the application though. Some needs more port connections and other ones don't. So to apply these changes, because it's a config level change we've made, we'll have to stop Postgres. So we use our Docker stop Postgres database folder. Then we'll start it again. It'll take the changes we made to our config file. So why don't we can look at, we'll go to pgadmin. Now we made some parameter changes. They aren't always visible or too visible in the UI. So one of the things we do, we could, the version and things you can see by clicking, but we'll do a query. And we can grab some of the config data. So in this case, we'll look at the max connections. So we can do a query, we'll run it. Now if you remember, we changed it to 1,000. So there we have 1,000. We can do the same on any other parameters you might have changed. Again, not everything is visible through the main UI. So in some cases, you'll have no choice. If you wanted to confirm it, you'll have to view it through doing a query. So make the screen a little bit bigger so we can read it in one line. Now, another key thing, multiple instances. So in this case, we'll use a different version, right? We could use different ports. Well, maybe we'll still use different ports, but in this case, we'll use Postgres 9.6. A lot of the other syntaxes are all the same as what we did in the previous one. So we'll use our Docker 9.6, but we'll add the -d. One small different thing we can do, we can run Postgres on. So we'll use, in this case, 5431. Default is 32. However, you'll see when we connect to it, we can stick in 5431. So we would have multiple running at the same time. So I'll probably stop the other image. We don't want to get any ports confused between the two. And then the default user I always use, of course, Postgres. A lot of people use password Postgres. I always use admin, just to be different. You got to use the -e. You'll get an error message if you don't. He just applies the attribute to the image itself, and then we'll add our tag for the version we want. Again, if you looked on the Docker website, you can see all the ones they have. It's right up to 10. I mainly use the older ones, but you can use anything you want. So in this case, not all the images exist. So it takes a little longer to download. If I'd used 9.5, of course, it would have worked almost immediately. Okay, so we have our image. So now we can do the Docker PS. We can see all our images running. You can see the 5431. If we bring up our tool, we can add our new, or connect to a new server. It's the same IP in this case, 10.8. And there we go. We'll change our port, 5431. And of course, Postgres and admin. And then we'll click OK. And you can see, if we look on here, we can open it up. We can see the port that everything's running on by looking at the attribute for port. And there we have it. We can stop anything we want. So in this case, we'll just stop. We can stop our Postgres 9.5 or 9.6. And or we could run new images. We could do anything we want. However, I think that will be it today. So look for other videos. I think the next one I'll do is on LDAP, Active Directory type thing. Stay tuned.